On this episode of Made in America, we're talking about the value of internships and why it's so important to work your passion. I'm with David Philbrick, Business Development Manager at MW Industries. Don't go anywhere to find out what they make and why they make it. Hey, it's Ari Santiago, President, CEO of IT Direct. Welcome to the Made in America podcast. I'm here with David Philbrick, an executive at NW Industries, longtime Connecticut resident and a powerhouse in manufacturing knowledge. David, I am really excited to have you on. Well, thanks so much for coming today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, listen, it's the Made in America podcast, so we start off with the same two questions. What do you make and why do you make it?
Oh, good question. Tough question, actually.
There you go.
Yeah, we do... Our history is spring manufacturing and metal forming. In our region of Connecticut, there's probably 30 spring manufacturing companies in probably like a 30-mile radius. So it's kind of like a historical element of manufacturing in this region.
That's exciting. And what do you guys make the springs for? Like, what's kind of the why behind what you do and the value you create?
Well, when we first started the business, or when Leo started the business, 1972. Connecticut's known for having U.S. Surgical, and U.S. Surgical back in the early days of the 70s was growing really rapidly, and a lot of the manufacturing components that we made went to in a lot of medical devices, skin staplers and suturing devices back in the early days, and it seemed like Leo developed a relationship with other medical companies, and we ended up manufacturing more and more components for medical devices. And, of course, some precision businesses like Raytheon or some of the weapon systems, that our government needs for...
You guys built for that as well.
Yeah.
So where exactly would I find a spring in a medical device, right? Like, just a curiosity of mine. Like, I don't know.
Springs come in different forms. They could be a flat spring, they could be a torsion spring, they could be a constant force spring.
Well, then maybe I should start with what's the definition of a spring then? How about we go right to the beginning?
It's a component that has stored energy.
Okay.
So, and they use that energy to push, direct, tension, or keep a device open or jaws open. So a device has automatic retraction or compression techniques in a device, for example, for the motion or articulation of a component or device. So example of some of the springs that we've manufactured through our legacy business would be like tensioning staples in a cartridge, for example. So a skin stapler typically has about 32 staples in a cartridge. So how those staples feed into the jaw or the forming anvil, you use a spring that's that is compressed almost to solid, and it keeps feeding all these staples forward. So the
like
device
popping it up, so the next staple's ready. That makes a lot of sense. So let's talk a little bit about, how long have you been with Economy? Well, with MW Industries, but I know originally it was Economy Spring. We'll get to that whole.
Sure.
But how long have you been with the organization?
I've been with MW, purchased Economy Spring in 2011, so it's been about 9 years now.
For at MW, and how long were you at Economy before that?
This will be my 13th year, but I've been in the spring industry for this coming January would be my 40th year.
40th year? Well,
in the same techniques, same roles.
Well, first of all, happy anniversary a little early.
It's coming. It's coming.
And so talk to me a little bit about this. How has sort of the spring industry and spring manufacturing in Connecticut and in general changed, over, just let's talk about Economy Spring, but from the 70s now to almost to 2020.
Oh my God, that's a mouthful.
Sure.
If you think about it, in the 70s, everything was mechanical forming systems where, you had flywheels on machines, and they had some electronics on some of the torsion machines and cam-driven machines, and even the coiling machines. And as we started progressing into the late 70s, early 1980s, motion control and CNC manufacturing systems started coming available, and it kind of really revolutionized our business. And then I think in the late 80s, after the coiling machines were developed first, we had CNC wireframe machines that turned into camless machine. Everything was done by servo motors and motion control devices.
Right.
And then towards the 90s, the sensing capabilities and integrated sensing. So there was closed loop feedback systems in a lot of these devices or machines, and it led to running more lights out capabilities.
Lights out meaning I can operate these processes or these cells without a human even being too engaged with it.
Correct. So we would run them pretty much close to 24 hours a day. We'd all go home at, our typical 9 or 10 or 12-hour day, and the machine would run for another 10 hours, or you could set the timer and it would run for like 5 hours and
like
fill
your
all
coffee
the bins.
machine at home, right?
Right, exactly. We use like little indexing machines
Right.
that would collect the parts and lock control. So the following day, you run a little bit at risk, but it's really cool stuff.
So the manufacturing process itself has advanced, quite a bit, which
tremendously.
which is similar, right, to a lot of different manufacturing, which has gone less from, we talked about before, sort of the dark, dirty, dingy, oily, lots of manual labor to a lot more of that lean, green, clean, computer-aided manufacturing, clean environments and all that.
That's right.
So before we get more into that, which I do want to talk to me a little bit about how the spring, what you make and what you make it for has changed. Has what the spring goes into, has the precision of the springs, the size, has that changed at all? Has the technology of the spring changed, or is it really just how we make it that's changed?
That's a really good question. Both, actually.
Okay.
So, the components have become more sophisticated. Technology has become much smaller. So it has a smaller space. So the constraints that a lot of the engineers, when they're designing something, rather than filling in a 10 millimeter device, which is about the size of your pinky finger, into something that's smaller than your pen, a 3 millimeter device, which is like a 1/8 inch diameter, a little space like that. And you've got all these rods and moving components and articulation in something that's inside that little space.
So what's enabled that, David? Like what's given us the ability to work at those like small levels?
The precision of the equipment, the CNCs has given us better control, better programming, rather than a cam-driven machine where we're very limited to making adjustments. Nowadays on some of the CNC coiling equipment, if we had for example, a very long compression spring that went into a very fine device, and we can go to the 33rd coil and make an adjustment. Where in the old days you couldn't do that. 30 years ago you couldn't do such a thing.
So does all this precision, how does this impact? Like, listen, most of the people that listen to this podcast, myself included, will probably never have the opportunity to manufacture a spring.
True.
But we probably have been grateful that some of the medical devices that we've needed at various times in our life have had springs. So as the end user or the person who it was used on maybe, how has this smaller size and precision helped me or impacted me or impacted outcomes in medical area?
For example, insurance drives a lot of that. Okay. And the OEMs are pushed to create devices that work in smaller envelopes. So, for example, a surgeon would, and nowadays everything's done laparoscopically. It's not like open incisions anymore like it used to be back in the day.
Cut your entire chest cavity open.
Exactly. Right? Some of that still exists, but a lot of it can be done through a 10 millimeter instrument or 5 millimeter instrument or 3 millimeter instrument. So nowadays, and even some of the laparoscopic robots that are used today, now that's the newest thing of the recent era.
Yeah.
The surgeon would put incisions to put 3 or 4 different instruments. Well, if one instrument was a grasping instrument and another one was a cauterizing instrument and another one was an electrosurgical scalpel, wouldn't it be better if you had all 3 in one device? So that's what they're building today. So now, for every incision that the surgeon puts in someone's abdominal cavity, it takes them 15 to 20 minutes to suture all those incisions
up and make that happen.
Right? So that's 20 minutes in a hospital room times 2 or 3 when you can eliminate 3 more incisions. saves the operating room time, surgeon time.
Better
Insurance pays a
patient
little-
outcomes,
better patient outcomes.
less risk of
That's
infection.
a mouthful.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Better
Of,
patient
that's a lot of
outcomes.
great stuff. And at the end
So
of the
think about that.
and so you guys are kind of on the front lines of helping that innovation that allows us to do
Correct.
these like amazingly cool things we see
Exactly.
in the hospital or on the Discovery Channel or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we have one right now. Actually, I can talk about a little bit with Medtronic. It's called. We call it Project Hook. So and essentially, that
Do all your projects have fun names, kind of like those military operations?
Yeah, it's there's always these cool acronyms.
I like
a
it.
lot of the projects have really neat names. Some are Revival, some are Hook, some are Thunder. We've got all these like really cool names. So and all the engineering team knows what we're talking about. It's
That's
really
awesome.
cool. It's cool lingo. I like it.
I
It's
do
kind
too.
of cool.
Yep.
Yeah, it's really neat. So then.
So tell me about Project Hook.
So Project Hook. So for example, it was a 10 millimeter device and a product that was already on the market, and it was called the Ligasure. And they had a device that would clamp down on tissue, body tissue, and it uses vibration, ultrasonic vibration, and it generates a lot of heat, and it seals the fluid vessels or tissue vessels in your body.
Yeah.
And then there's a knife that slides through the center, so it can part the tissue as it heats and seals and parts the tissue. So they only had space for about a 30 thou diameter or whatever to fit in whatever available space there was there. Can we engineer the electroscalpel through there? And I got involved in the project about 4 years ago, and I worked with the lead engineer at Medtronic in Colorado, and we created this wire form on the CNC wire forms, which was a torsion machine, but now it's just a big, long wire form with different jogs and different spaces to clear the areas in the device. So we had a little motion that we were able to create. And then they had to extend the entire length of the device, which is about 18 inches, and 22 inches on a larger device. Mm-hmm. And when we were done, we developed welding processes, heat shrink tubing that we applied to it. Then we had a laser machine, a heat shrink tube. This is not done in a spring shop, by the way.
Right.
But it is being done in a
spring shop.
So we're so much more than a spring shop now. It's what we've evolved into. And it's really a great story. And when we look at that project, now, it eliminated one of those incisions like I was just telling you about. Mm-hmm. And when they deploy it and they're done using it and they wanted to cut ligaments or other tissue, they can deploy the hook out the end, and then the jaws retract. Now you've got an electric scalpel that's going in there and doing some work. And then you use the jaws to remove the tissue. It's wild.
That is extremely wild. Hard even to follow, but very, very, very cool stuff that you guys are doing. So talk to me a little bit about kind of like how workforce has evolved at Economy Spring and MW. Like, how many people do we have working out in Southington? What are typically people doing kind of in the plant right now? What are the different roles that are out there? Tell me about that a little bit.
Yeah, that's a challenge. I think a lot of spring companies that are family-oriented companies are very much challenged. I mean, they've got limited payroll and some of their ability to scale up a workforce, or create a workforce. It takes 4 to 5 years, to teach a young individual a good manufacturing career. And I think it's where it gets challenging is, some of the students maybe that left high school earlier or something, and maybe it takes them 4 or 5 years to figure out, hey, I got to find a better career for myself or educate myself a little more to do the work in a manufacturing environment. I mean, as we were talking about earlier, all the CNC equipment is very sophisticated technology. You get to do metric conversions off the top of your head. You got to be able to be really good, solid in math, some theoretical visual skills, of motion in space, to create machine movements, which you can program. Right. So, there's a lot of really cool spatial considerations, when you're getting into CNC manufacturing, and it's very easy to crash a tool, if you're not sure which things are. Robots are just a programmable device, man.
That's right. They do whatever we tell them to do.
Exactly.
Not too different from a car.
So
let's talk about let's get back to that.
Sure.
But how did you get into it?
That was.
Did you always know you wanted to be a maker of springs, medical device designer?
Yeah, it didn't quite happen that way. No.
This
it was
wasn't
actually
the 5-year-old dream. You dressed up as a tool and die spring maker for Halloween. No,
no, not at all. No, when I was when I was going to school in college, I was going to school in Long Island to become. Actually, I was looking to be a marine biologist. So and I was really great in math. I was a whiz in physics. All that was really easy, but I hated chemistry. So that was a problem. So
if you want to be a marine biologist, that's
yeah,
probably
you
a
really
problem.
and you got to swim in the ocean, and all that. So yeah, by the time I got done, I left school in Long Island and I came home. And it was towards the end of my second year, my second semester, and I went to get a job in Southington to work for the summer, and it was Gemco Manufacturing, which is a spring company in Southington. Mm-hmm. And as I was going down the hill, I passed a sign that said Gelco. I said, did I read it wrong? Gemco. So I was going to pull into Gelco, and I finished down the bottom of the hill. It was really Gelco who posted the ad, but at the bottom of the hill there was Gemco, both on the same street. It's like you can't make this stuff up. So I walked into Gemco, and then I met the Divineer family, and they were Peter Divineer, who owned the business, and his father owned the business, and Peter was Dom's son. Brought me in, and I went to the same school as grammar school he did, and I knew we all went through the same schooling systems.
Sure, yeah.
I went to the same church.
Yeah.
It was all that. So next year I was in like Flint, So I worked there for the summer, and I was running the machines. I really liked it. I got pretty good at it fast, running the 4-slide machines back then. And I was supposed to start my next semester for mechanical engineering degree in September. And then they asked me, says, do you like this? I go, yeah, I love machines. I love working in a tool shop, just like my uncle's shop at home. And they said, well, would you like to be a tool and die maker? I said, yeah, sure. So I said, that sounds cool, but let me check it out. I didn't know what it was. He said, it sounds cool, but I said, let me think about it. I said, but it sounds interesting. I says, so I went and I talked to my grandfather. And my grandfather at the time, he says, in the Great Depression, the tool and die makers were the only guys who had a job. Everyone else they can do without most of the staff, but a tool maker can do everything.
Yep.
So I said, wow, that was pretty impressed me anyway.
Yeah.
So and I decided at that point,
having a secure job in the Great Depression probably impresses anybody.
Yeah,
if they know about the Great Depression. Yeah,
absolutely. And I was pretty amazed by that. And I liked working with machines anyway. So I mean. And
so am I just so I can clarify this entire point. So your entire career in medical devices all happened because you stopped at the wrong business when you went to get a summer job in between your junior and senior year of high school.
Unbelievable. I went to the place by accident. And I wouldn't have changed my course of decision making along the way. I would do it all again.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. And so you're at Gemco, and it sounds like you decided, you know what? No more marine biology. No more Long Island University. I'm going to hang out here.
No mechanical engineer.
Yeah, I'm just going to hang out and learn tool and die making. So
and it was wonderful.
Yeah. How long were you there? I mean, give me that.
So I was with the Divineers, and they became very important mentors to me. Good work ethic, things of that sort. And I had the good fortune that the gentleman that was managing the tool room at the time was already a degreed engineer, and he was the tool room supervisor. Yeah. And he allowed me to learn the design and drafting longhand, which I learned from day one. And I went to night school at Tungus Community College, and back then it was Waterbury State Technical College. I had night programs. Mm-hmm. So I went to school at night and, did the physics, did some drafting, and to complement my trade. And then about within a year of being an apprentice, I was designing my own jobs. And guys that were doing it for 20 years, I was doing much more sophisticated designs by the time I was in my third year of my apprenticeship. And I was being relied to do all the sophisticated designs by the time it was the fourth year, and it was a cool.
What do you attribute that rapid success to? What put you there? Is this just? I have a mechanical mind. When I was 5 years old, remember you used to have the wind-up toys in the 60s? Sure.
You wind up the toy and you put it on the ground and it spins around, or it's a plane and it just makes noise. But you wind it up.
Yeah.
When I was 5 years old, I took one apart because I wanted to see how it worked. but I end up slicing my finger open. I put myself in a hospital with stitches because I wanted to see how the thing worked. And all through my young life with my mom and being home, whenever she was going to throw an appliance away or something, don't throw it away. I got to take it apart. I got to, I want all the screws. I want all the metal components, whatever I could use to make something. I always kept all the parts. I still do that to this day. It's the weirdest thing.
It's just kind of there. It's funny, I think there's so many of us can relate to, if you just find the thing that you really enjoy doing and you get into it, you can just be great at it very, very quickly. And it
absolutely
never really feels like a job.
It's not a job.
Yeah,
it's not a job for me.
I bet you got a pretty. I bet you got a pretty slick setup at home, even to this day.
I have my own laser at home, and I have a lot of CNC equipment at home. So I'm a little spoiled in that respect. So I feel very fortunate though that I have the ability to do that.
Yeah, no,
so
absolutely.
It's been really, it's really, and it's a lot of fun for me, and even with having the equipment at home, it's allowed me to develop some new things for our plant here in Connecticut.
Yep.
I've had the good fortune of presenting a case to my CEO to give me $1 million to buy a couple of lasers, and they went for it, and now I've got, I don't know, my team in Southington now has probably 5 or 6 lasers, and we just brought our newest one in about a month and a half ago, which is unbelievably sophisticated and so cool. Yeah, it's really great stuff.
It's funny, your eyes light up like a kid even now.
Oh man,
just talking about the
gear.
gear.
I love it. I'm a geek. I'll admit it.
That's all right, man. We gotta own it. We gotta love it. Yeah, absolutely. So, kind of talk about your career now. So, I mean, you're really more into kind of relationship building and business development. So maybe just talk a little bit about your progression from college dropout, apprentice going to night school, to now executive of a large corporation.
As I finished my apprenticeship, I went to another job after being with the Divineers for about 5-6 years, and I was assistant toolroom foreman in another company, which I was there for a few years. And then I went to Southington Tool and Manufacturing, where I was there for 20 years. So I became the vice president of that company, vice president of engineering. I managed all the technical development at that company. And I had the good fortune of having a very good relationship with the owner at the time. My intent was to buy the company back then as an individual. And he afforded me some great opportunities to go to school to educate myself. And he allowed me to go to like MIT. I went for a week training sessions in motion control in the late 1980s, optics and sensing and motion control seminars. I attended, and he always paid for it and allowed me to go. And it was a great opportunity for me to learn and expand my knowledge base. And then at the same time, our industry was evolving with all the CNC and the feedbacks. So I knew how to make the system, let alone
just operate it.
And it was just really a great experience for me. So I got to know the intimate details of the technology as opposed to just buying something turnkey. You know? And I've applied it throughout the years. So,
but you ended up not buying Southington.
No, I didn't. No, we didn't come to agreement, and then I went to economy, and I've been there ever since.
Right.
So and I came into economy, and it was really interesting. Leo, the owner, when he went to hire me, I was excited. It was the same customers I was working with at Southington Tools, so it was a comfortable. It was a comfortable place to go, and the salary was never an issue. And then I asked him, well, what would you like me to do here when I come here? He says, you figure it out. So it was like really pretty funny when he said that.
Give you your thing. So, I mean, as you've kind of progressed, have you found that in the later stages of your career when you're doing more kind of leadership, that the focus is less on the tools and the tool making and the products and more on the people? Do you still feel like it's heavily into the machining? Like kind of where are you in terms of your role there?
Okay, so where I'm at today is 3 years ago, I was the engineering manager. I've been in engineering management for probably 33 years of my 40.
Okay.
So a long time I've been managing humans. and I've got a lot of great people that I've met and good people I've worked with, and I've helped develop their careers.
Sure.
And I feel proud of the people that I've met and helped, and vice versa. They helped me. Their success is my success.
Absolutely.
You know, so I'm really cool with that.
How did you develop those skills? You know, I think it's one of the things that I can be difficult, especially those of us that have an engineering mind, an engineering background.
True.
That's a different mindset, right?
It is.
Than people, and so I'm just curious, how did you kind of exercise those people management muscles and kind of exercise that up to be able to be an effective leader?
True.
Because there's different skills.
Absolutely. And I'll be honest with you, I never wanted to possess that skill set, but it became apparent to me that it's really important to pay attention to other people's needs and their personal development. And that's something I was always focused on, engineering the result or getting to the result faster. And I could always think a lot faster on my feet than a lot of people could, you know. And I mean, if it was bad times in a war, I mean, I'd be a really handy guy to have around, but it's not wartime per se. So I had to learn through, you know, my own looking in the mirror of my own evaluation of myself. And for some people that might be difficult, I think, sometimes. I've had the support of company owners and even my corporation. I'm very grateful. Has invested personal development activities for myself personally.
So you've invested time, not just in going to MIT for engineering stuff, but you've invested time and energy and kind of like
personal development.
Yeah.
And I've been very blessed with the gifts that have been given to me by a lot of people. So, you know, and I have a lot of mentors that I can think of 3 or 4 that were very invaluable in my personal development to help me with that piece.
It's really critical, right, to have people there to
the Divineers family, the Callett family, Leo Charette.
Yeah.
You know, so I've had good people around me.
Yeah, that's really
it really pushed me.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
So
it's good stuff.
So you sort of mentioned, we talked a little bit about Economy Spring no longer being Economy Spring, right? You didn't change anywhere. MW Industries is the new Economy Spring. And there's a lot of people out there, you know, kind of in the manufacturing space in Connecticut where we're looking at different succession planning, right? And some of them are family businesses going to the next generation. Some maybe like Southington Tool considered at one time selling to employees. Some other people are looking outside investors. So just talk a little bit about Economy Spring got sold to whom and where are we now on that path?
So Economy Spring was sold in 2011.
Yep.
To Matthew Warren Industries. It was a small corporation of spring companies. And I think at that time we might have had 7 or 8 spring manufacturing companies. And it was a small corporation. It was located out of Logansport, Indiana. And lo and behold, as we transitioned our business to be a family-owned business to, I wouldn't say it was a little more rigorous management, but it was more involved. They wanted to learn more about how we operated, and Economy Spring was considered the crown jewel of their group because of the way we operated, the level of skill talent that we had at the business. And at that time, we were strictly just spring forming, wire forming, metal forming, not diverse like with technology as we are today. And they, in turn, were bought by Genstar Capital about 6 months after we were acquired, which was like,
hello, new owner.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, we got all our heads were spinning. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I mean, that was like wild, and our people adapted to it pretty well. And it was really exciting because at the time when Leo sold our business, he was around $19 million in sales at Economy Spring in Connecticut, in Southington, and we had about 90 employees at the time. So it excelled pretty rapidly from that point to today.
So you think MW and then Genstar really invested in Southington and in the Economy Spring facility and grew that, and you credit them for doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's no question. They had no problem with the investing capital with Economy's team. We were a continuous improvement environment, still are. Our people were always interested in always making things better. You know, we're never satisfied with just being status quo. And I think that's kind of what set us apart. And when you look at, you know, the history of our entire industry, you know, I mean, the part of Connecticut, you know, where all the precision tool makers or coiling individuals and the spring makers is all based on our colonial history. You know, I mean, colonial America, the 13 original colonies. Well, when someone tells me, like a Swiss watch manufacturer comes up to me and says, "Geez, I want to get into the medical industry. We make the best stampings in the world." I said, "Yeah, well, you know, there's American precision too. You know, we're the clock makers and watch makers too. You know."
Right.
You know, so they always get pretty fascinated when we could do the little microscopic, tiny components as well. So,
Right. Really.
yeah, there's two sides to the world on that.
Absolutely.
Piece.
Absolutely. No, there's a great history in Connecticut, and we try and talk about it all the time. That dates back hundreds of years to our ability to really be innovators and
Absolutely.
and precision manufacturers. And I think you rightly brought up, if I even farther back than I normally think about. Right,
Sure.
I think about kind of the 1800s. You're going back like well before that and thinking about colonial America.
Well, yeah, the 1800s. I think I agree with you. I think the 1800s were fascinating for manufacturing in Connecticut. I mean, I've seen a lot of photos or old paintings or pen and ink sketches on manufacturing businesses where the trains rolling up to the building and it was heavy industrial manufacturing.
Absolutely.
You know, Connecticut was a real manufacturing power, and it was usually along the rivers, like Pequabic River.
We needed power, right? So that's
Right.
why they're those big water wheels, yeah.
Exactly, you know. And Plymouth actually
There you go. That's right.
was renowned with the Lewis Lock manufacturing and back in the 1840s. So it's really cool stuff.
Yeah, a lot of these little towns, right, kind of popped up along these little rivers where they could like set up a manufacturer and get some power. This was before,
Exactly.
nuclear, natural gas, and CLNP. We had
Yep.
we had to deal with it kind of nature's way.
Exactly.
So just go back to this for 1 second. So
Sure.
Genstar kind of came in, really invested in Economy Spring,
Yes,
has
they did.
grown. So we were in 1990, and then still owned by Genstar, or there was another sale, I
Yeah,
think?
about I'd say 3 years ago, 4 years ago. Sound about right? I think we were bought by American Securities, and they're a very progressive, manufacturing-centric organization.
Another private equity group?
A private equity group, a little larger than Genstar,
Yep.
and they're very hands-on on the management, executive management, and they're really focused on, organic growth, and really want a heavy emphasis on the technology side. So economy became, even in the Genstar era, was the largest company, and it was like the shooting star of the group due to the culture in the plant, which was very important to the growth of economy. You have to credit all the manufacturing supervisors, the senior staff, working to be creative and working together, to make things better for themselves.
So when
that's a good
Genstar
thing.
came in and American Securities has come in, a lot of times, well, I wouldn't even say a lot of times, I'd say, my experience has been that sort of like, culture is sort of predicated on values and
True.
values is predicated on leadership. So
That's
I guess I'm a little, and we talked a little bit briefly before we got started here about like just my anecdotal experience has been, that these types of, transitions to these larger organizations often have a lot of negative fallout, but it sounds like this one's been really positive.
It
And
has.
so, did the culture at Economy Spring change? Did they kind of let you continue to do what you were doing? Talk a little bit about that.
We continued doing what we were doing. When you get more involved with a larger VC
Yeah.
owned business, there's more metrics involved. So you probably have a few more extra meetings to go to. You'll have more metrics that you have to do in addition to what you're doing every day. So, and for us, our growth, we had to incorporate a second shift. So, in order for our team to maintain their values, I was a big proponent of making sure we're educating our next generation of coilers or next generation of tool makers or whatever, the setup people. That pushed their values a little bit. You had to make sure if people saw the vision the same way you did or the same way our staff does. You want to continue to grow our organization.
Do you feel that like the facility, because I think there's 25 facilities kind of under the current MW
Correct.
Industries
Yes.
now. Does it feel like 25 loosely coordinated groups that kind of each operate on their own island, so the culture at each place might be a little bit different based on its history? Is it more centralized? What does it feel like to work when you're there?
I think that's evolving
Yep.
as we speak. I think it's important to note that a lot of these companies or mergers and acquisitions that we get involved with, a lot of the companies do have their own identity. They have their own system of doing things, but that's part of the evolution of our corporate culture as well, where we're working to create more of a shared identity, and that's part of the challenge of how we evolve as people that are involved in our corporate level.
What is the
organization.
Economy Spring was first sold to Genstar. We were 19 and 90.
Right.
Where are we at now, revenue and stuff?
We're around 50 million and growing.
Yeah.
Currently, Economy Spring is in about 85,000 to 100,000 square feet if you had all the little jogs that we have. It's an inefficient structure, but it was built for a $19 million company, not a $50 million company.
Sure.
So consequently, right now we're bursting at the seams. So even if we were to build on an addition of 40, 50,000, it's just not enough.
Okay.
So currently we're in the process of working with the state of Connecticut, and we're moving our entire company about a mile and a half down the road, also in Southington, which is good.
Yep.
And we're moving into 267,000 square feet in
There
2020.
Okay.
So we're going to
give you a little leg room.
Yeah, everybody needs a leg room. We have equipment coming in every month. It's really ridiculous. I feel bad. There's no place to put it. Yeah, so we've already moved our shipping off site and warehousing off site. So it's a challenge.
Sure.
So, but it's great to have this type of growing pain. So,
what's our employment count up to now?
We have 212, I believe, full-time employees that are on the books, and we probably have 20 to 30 temps on average.
Okay.
And that number's growing.
Right.
It's exciting to see. When we
more than doubled revenue.
Yep.
More than doubled staff. Now we're more than doubling
in about
sort of square
8 years'
footage.
time.
That's impressive. What do you credit that? That's very good growth, and
absolutely.
And seems like it's sustainable. What do you credit
Yes.
that to? What's been the underpinning of that?
We've I'd say it's our management style and philosophy, the way we were going to run the company. We meet like once a year, all the sales team, the engineering, senior staff, managers. We do a strategic deployment process, which is a Danaher methodology. And I think the strategic discussion around our sales helps sharpen our focus on some of our customers or the markets we want to go after. We share knowledge amongst the group, and that's one of the things that really helped us tremendously is the ability of all of our team to work very well together. Mm-hmm. It's a very powerful team. They share information and knowledge. No one keeps things close to the
What
vest.
is that meeting like?
Oh, it's very intense. It's passion. Not everything's a yes.
Right.
Yeah, it's a debate. It gets heated. A little blood, sweat, and tears along the way as well. But at the end of the day, it's a concerted effort of focus and ability for us to sharpen the tip of the sword, so to speak. So when we're going out to meet with our customers or the corporations that own our customers or the OEMs themselves directly, we're speaking the right language, and we're there to grow our business with their business as their business grows.
Right.
So
I just want to go back to one thing, and that maybe circle back around, because you had credited continuous improvement with really a lot of the success at Economy Spring that made it what it was. So, talk a little bit about how you guys operate continuous improvement.
So, for example, if we were to build a progressive die tool, per se, there's a lot of capital expense that goes into a tool like that. So, as we run a thing, we learn better ways of manufacturing a component over time. So, as we run a product through pure repetition, or it could be a process improvement, it could be a tool improvement. It could be learning a new technique for the next time we build something that's similar. along those forming.
And so how do you guys
guidelines.
capture that? Are you guys
We
kind of
do.
taking time out daily?
Oh yeah,
weekly,
we have a way of
document it?
Yeah, we document it. We actually have a pretty powerful continuous improvement team where we set goals for cost savings on current departments across the entire plant. Every department is part of the continuous improvement process. So we used to do it inherently in the work the way we operated, and now we actually have continuous improvement teams where we're looking for cost savings, and we're looking for how we can help improve our profitability on a lot of the products we manufacture.
And how does a continuous improvement team operate? You just like give me
so
some
we'll have a meeting with some of the supervisors. They'll document an idea of what, across the whole department, that if someone thinks there's something that we could do better, or if there's if I
wasted
had a right
process, or
maybe if you made me a different basket, I would put these parts in this thing, and I would be able to do 3 times more, or I could do it faster, or we would reduce the cycle time, things like that. I mean, it's not necessarily all the highest skilled people. It could be absolutely anybody that can come up with an idea. So we have a way of capturing that those ideas and thoughts into a document, and it gets presented to the team, and they'll make it an actionable item, at their meetings, and they'll work to promote the right ideas that give the faster cost improvements, even if it's spending capital to make an investment for cost improvements. That's something the team's willing to do, and that's what we do as an organization.
And how do you guys celebrate those little victories, right? Because I mean, my view is the things that we celebrate and put attention on are the things we're going to get more of, right? And if we celebrate the positive things, we'll tend to get more of those. So do you guys
it's really
that?
Actually, there's a fun thing. Unfortunately, I'm not that close to it, but I've seen some examples of it recently. They actually put everyone's who's given an idea name into a hat for a given month. And then there's there's a gift, or it could be a gift certificate to a restaurant or something along those lines. Sure. And everyone's name goes into a hat. And I just saw a recent example in our digital media screens in a plant just last week, and it was like a pinwheel with everyone's names, and they spin it, and whoever's names it falls on with the idea, that's the person who gets the monthly gift. I think it's brilliant. I think it's really brilliant. I appreciate stuff like that.
Absolutely, I think it's really, really good. Fun.
Yeah,
no doubt.
Absolutely, it's good stuff.
How would you describe the culture in the plant, and what it's like? What is it like for a typical person to work there? What does it feel like?
It's a fun, demanding, exacting environment. I mean, we all are hard workers. We don't accept anyone that's not going to work as hard as we do. And I think I would contribute that to all of the supervisors and lead managers in the plant. And everyone embraces that method of work. And when we bring a young person in, we expect them to learn and move along with the same demands that we have and the same expectations we have for ourselves. So I think that's kind of a cool thing. So we set the lead by example.
How's that been working out for you guys? There's a lot of people out there always complaining about this generation doesn't work as hard as we do. How are you finding that?
We have our young people. I have to say, I make it a point to go out of my way when I'm in the plant to say hello to them and visit with them and chat a little bit with the young people, because I think it's really, really important. I mean, I believe right now we've got 5 or 6 apprentices. We have 1 or 2, one that just finished recently, and I know we've got another one in the wings waiting to start. So I mean, we're constantly refreshing our young staff, and we're finding them. I mean, they come to us. It's a pretty rigid screening process for a young individual to come into our plant. They've got to have a go-to attitude. They want to have. We want vim and vigor. We want energy. I mean, if you're going to come and put an interview with us, and you want to be a young person to come and try to be part of our team, you better have some energy.
Gotta bring the energy.
You got to bring it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. I mean, listen, you guys you're growing. You've grown, more than doubled kind of over the last 7-8 years.
Yep.
You're doubling your space. You're adding more machines, and that's going to mean more staff.
Oh, absolutely.
And so, I mean, and I know it's not your primary role, so I don't know where your engagement is on it. But how are you guys kind of recruiting around here to fill those needs? And
well, we've grown. I mean. when I hired my replacement engineering manager of economy, and Dan's done a great job with the engineering team. I'm really, and Laura with the quality team. At the time, we probably had 4 engineers, 1 quality engineer. So it was only 5 of us, back in 2011.
Mm-hmm.
So today, I thank God we have close to 14. So there's 14 young engineers. They're all 30-somethings, and they're doing great. They're doing great work, managing projects, very bright MEs out of college, and even some of the MEs are taking on QE roles. It's very exciting to see the direction our team has progressed to.
Where do you guys recruit from typically?
Oh, yeah. Well, so we're working really closely with Central Connecticut, the Institute of Technology, and we sponsor some co-op students.
Co-op students?
Yeah. So in the engineering department, they make it like a requirement to finish their mechanical engineering degree or robotics degree, or typically they have to do a 6-month internship.
Ooh.
So they got to be on site. So we bring them in, and we'll keep them for 6 months. Sometimes we've had a case or two where we kept one for a year, but we found that we're trying to rotate them to get younger people in and give that student an opportunity to go back on another workplace to get some more experience or exposure. And it's done wonderful. I get unique comments from some of the previous interns that hit me up on LinkedIn. So it's pretty cool. So it's wonderful me to see.
Well, it's great, right? Internship's such a great way to get to know somebody and for them to get to know you, right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
It's not. There's only so much you can get in an interview and looking at a resume. Correct. But if you get someone to work there for 3, 6, 12 months, gosh, I mean,
you get good experience.
Oh
with
yeah,
us.
and both ways, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
both ways.
To the conversation we had before,
right.
One of the ways you were able to be so successful so quickly is you found somebody who had a passion for something.
Correct.
And you put them in front of it.
Correct.
And if someone had showed you a piece of paper instead of you working at Gemco and just said, hey, well, how about this? You're back in Long Island, and who knows, maybe a miserable marine biologist, and maybe not even a very good one.
Yeah, be chemistry in the lab.
Exactly, right, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And but you get an opportunity, you go do work somewhere, you get to see it, feel it, experience it in both ways.
Good stuff.
That's powerful stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, always culture.
And it's I've never been able to even turn it off. I've got to be building or creating all the time.
Yeah.
In my personal life, I mean, I just like building and making things. It's just something that I just cannot stop.
That's awesome. So you've got the co-op, with Central Connecticut. Where else are you guys finding folks?
We stay close to. We're involved with NESMA, New England Spring Manufacturers Association. So that's a collective group that. It comes together and try to find ways of being creative with staffing. And Naugatuck Valley Community College, Tungus Community College, we have relationships with those 2 organizations, with sponsoring some NESMA-related activities. As a matter of fact, our Economy Spring team, there's a NESMA coiling training class. I believe there's 15 students in the class.
Okay.
2 of Economy Spring's employees are running the teaching of the program,
so there you
and
go.
5 of the students are ours.
Oh wow, look at that!
So that's pretty wild. And then the other 10 come from other NESMA companies, and it's a NESMA sponsored training session. So I'm really proud of the engagement level of the ECHO staff, and they're doing a great job with. Helping to educate our community and our peers.
Right. Well, listen, I mean,
stuff.
That's where I think those industry groups are super important. And we see
very important.
And we see them like all different kinds, right? You mentioned NESMA, and other times we've talked about, EMA, and there's, all different kinds of groups. From
SMA.
SMA, CMA, right? There's just so many.
There
and I think
are
they're
so many.
So important to be able to share knowledge, do things together, workforce and stuff like that. That's pretty awesome.
Good stuff.
Let me ask you a question. There's a lot of opportunities inside of organizations where they need to figure out different ways and what to invest in. And you've talked a lot about investment in different machines and all that different stuff, and facilities actually we're talking about.
Yep.
But there's so many demands on every organization in terms of IT and facilities and equipment and personnel training and business development and travel and customer. So, I mean, and I know you're kind of more on the relationship building side at this stage, but maybe talk a little bit about, when you guys are looking at making those decisions of where to invest and what to invest in, how are those decisions made? How does the company think about that?
Well, I mean, when you're owned by a venture capitalist company, I mean, there's got to be a procurement process. You have to
Right.
come up with a business case for why you're going to invest in a technology,
Sure.
or even another equipment to add on to the line you already have. So it gets to be a little more challenging. Fortunately for us, I mean, the type of products that we manufacture can have some very high growth rates.
Mm-hmm.
For example, in the pharmaceutical industry, I mean, the world's exploding right now with connected devices or auto injector systems, where there's connected components in the devices. And there was an article that came out a little less than a year ago in On Drug Delivery magazine, and it showed that in the current state in 2018, 2019, there's 43 million devices in the world. With the Internet of Medical Things,
Yeah.
with all these devices that communicate with smartphones and
Sure.
doctors
Heartbeat. Sugar
right.
monitoring.
So they said by the year 2021, 22, there's going to be 236 million. Think about that.
Yeah.
5x growth.
On a pretty
in
big
just
number.
devices.
And on a pretty big number to start with, right? 40 million is a pretty big number, yeah.
Yeah. So if you multiply that, I don't think there's even enough manufacturing in the world that can keep up with that kind of pace. This is what we're talking about.
And so you're finding that even though you got to make those business cases can be made because of the underlying
Correct.
demand, that's under there. So how rigorous, and I think this is interesting, and this
Sure,
is something,
sure.
I think there's some of the challenges you hear from
Sure.
organizations that go from sort of that family environment. I know Leo ran a great shop.
Oh,
We've talked before about he invested, he made the investments, right, in people, which is what's going to drive the business. And
Correct.
and those people, there's investments, right, sometimes
Absolutely.
that are people investments, sometimes they're technology investments that, I don't know, as a business owner myself, sometimes it's like comes down to gut a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
like you can some ways make a spreadsheet, say whatever you want, but
Right.
it's really being in the industry, knowing it, and kind of sensing just from talking to customers and seeing what's out there that we got to do this. Do you feel that that's restrictive in an environment where you're owned by, a large, private equity group? Are they supportive of that? Do you find ways around it? Like, talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, we have a situation like that right now, and I mean, we have to expand in Europe. I go to Europe once a month on my travel.
Lucky you.
Yeah, so I'm a little fortunate in that respect. We need to get our manufacturing footprint over there, and even American Securities recognize the value of being there. I mean, it's one of their directives that they wanted some of the whole different 25 locations to have some type of European activity. And we've already were doing that before we were purchased. It was something we were already working on. Yeah.
Right.
So, and it became really relevant to us that, we can grow substantial sales. And by having a European location. So they actually invested in a market study to prove that, what's the potential of the sales. So, I mean, that's how it works with big companies.
How did it come out?
Yeah, it came out very well. I mean, it was a no-brainer that we had to do it, but then it gets challenging. So when it gets put into the corporate's lap to accomplish such a thing, it can get mired in the mud a little bit.
Yeah.
So, we got to figure out, how we're going to pay for it, So there's a lot of work that goes into it. It's different if it was a family company. You had to do it, and you're just going to spend whatever.
Hey, Leo, let's make this happen.
Yeah, $500,000 or whatever it is to get it going. But
so different approaches, and there's merit, right, to both sides.
Exactly.
Because you got to make sure you're doing it right, and
exactly.
And if you can afford to kind of do the measurements, then that's
right.
That's
yeah,
great.
And again, when it's a larger company, it's about the metrics, and the metrics have to substantiate, the activity that you're going to employ. So I think that's the gist of it with that piece.
What do you see about the future of Economy Spring in Connecticut and the growth of the Southington facility? Is that you look at that as kind of a harbinger of things to come? You bullish on the future?
Yeah, actually, I have faith in bullish. Yes, I'm pro growth. I'm being told that with the market presence that we have and our reputation. I mean, the reputation helps us keep this momentum going, and the ability of all our staff to keep managing this, all the the individuals that are contributing to the growth of the business. I think, we're doing the right things, and we don't have employee turnover per se. So
Really?
we don't have those kind of problems. So I mean, the people are working on the very best equipment, the very best technology. They're not working on older styles of equipment. So I mean, we've got some of the best technology that a person can utilize in their day-to-day work, and it's a good environment. And everyone works overtime, 50 hours a week or more. It's a great environment. It's super clean. I mean, it's like walking into your office. This is what our manufacturing environment looks like. I mean, it's not like you mentioned earlier. It's not the dark, dingy days of factories of the 1940s and 50s here.
Right. We're at a whole different. We're at a
it's
whole
a
different
whole
place.
different realm. And when people come to walk through our plant, I mean, we're doing medical work. We have a clean room. Things are got to be very clean and organized and very tidy.
That's great. What I mean, what do you mentioned no turnover, which is like, oh, that's great, right?
That's a great thing.
You want to find good people,
Sure,
and then you want to keep them, right? So,
exactly.
So is there stuff that you guys are doing that you think helps to lead to that great retention story, specifically? Like any specific sort of takeaways where you're like, oh man, we do this. I mean, you had mentioned, by the way, already cleanliness, the very best technology, right? So that's all good. But
people typically, and there's got to be a lot of job satisfaction in the work they do. One thing I will say, which I'm very pleased with, a lot of our supervisors, when they have a young individual who's doing, progressively well, they'll keep challenging them. I mean, nice. We're never satisfied with just letting them be good at a particular thing. We're always going to push them to the next level, to get them to be a very top level contributor.
Is there a strategy
growth
behind that? Because I believe in that so much, right?
Oh,
I
do too.
I think if we challenge people and we help them grow and we connect them to the outcomes of what we're doing, if we can do those things, man, we're going to get some great people and they're going to stay for a long time.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're doing. And I'm very proud of all of our staff and the work that they're doing with the young people. There was a point where, I felt, that, can we take more time to do the apprentice thing? And there might have been some challenges. Everyone was working really hard. But I think when you look at the demographics of the age population in our economy plant, I think 30% of the population is 52 and up, or 30% of the population. So, I mean, we had to do something to sustain the,
right.
the growth of the business. I mean, it's our responsibility to teach the next generation.
Sure.
And I think everyone's really done a wonderful job with
people buying into that.
Yeah, they bought into it.
Is there an initiative
really
or a specific technique you guys are using to push that down? Is it?
No, I wouldn't say so. I just think it's with growing a second shift, which was challenging, especially in an area where you have high-skilled staff.
And
what
was
people
challenging
don't,
about it?
Yeah, because a lot of people want to work on first shift as opposed to second shift, or maybe it's more convenient for their lifestyle or a traditional lifestyle.
How'd you overcome that?
I'd say we're not totally overcome with it, but we found some incentives to get people motivated to work on the second shift. And most of our people work 10-hour days, so it's a 20-hour shift. So, and then the 4 hours you can run the lights out, and
right.
complement the
get it
work,
right in the full time.
Yeah.
What are some of like the new innovations kind of in the space or new technology in the spring that kind of excite you? Because I know you're a bit of a geek head, so let's we're getting to kind of time to wrap up, but let's talk a little bit about that. What are some of the innovations and technology in the space that excite you?
Well, I think I think the incorporation of a lot of sensing technology in manufacturing equipment is a big one. I think that's probably the biggest, and utilizing electronics or sensing guru in your manufacturing environment is really critical to the growth of improving your manufacturing capability in terms of having a better quality product. The machines are all capable of integrating feedback in these closed loop operating systems that we utilize in our manufacturing. And I think a lot of the sensing has come a long way, especially in the optics side, camera driven systems. sensing. The metrology is another one.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if I look at the evolution of even the metrology for measuring the components, it's evolved so dramatically.
Well, it has to, right? If we're
Right.
if we're going down to like, hundreds of thousandths of an inch or whatever, we've got to get we've got to get down there. And do you do any time? Do you spend any time like talking about that, or are you out there kind of sharing this knowledge anywhere?
Yeah,
like,
oh yeah, I do. I mean, even like today's podcast, for example,
Sure.
is one of them. I think we have a webinar coming up in a few weeks with medical product outsourcing, and
What do you be talking about on that?
we're going to be talking about designing auto injectors for multiple viscosities. So I know that's a mouthful. I mean, that's kind of like really geek driven.
Deep in the weeds on that, David. We're deep in the weeds.
Yeah.
Tell you what, we'll link it in the podcast notes for any other geeks that are super interested.
Yeah,
we'll definitely throw that in there. That's great.
For the right individuals, that's a fun topic.
Yes, exactly. Well, that's how it goes.
Yeah,
so listen,
exactly.
before we kind of turn to our wrap-up questions, I just wanted to ask you a little bit about, I know you're a Connecticut guy.
Sure.
You've lived here pretty much your whole life besides the short stint in Long Island. And there's probably a debate about how much time you spend here now with all your travels for business.
That's true.
Because I think you told me you scaled back to 3 weeks a month.
Yes.
So that'll tell people how much you've been traveling.
Yeah.
But, talk a little bit about any engagement that you've had in the community, because one thing I've noticed from successful people in business is they tend to get engaged in the community. So I'm just curious, like, have you been engaged at all in your local community, and what have you been able to do?
Yeah. In 2009, the manufacturing history. I mean, I was really very fond of the Pequapic River watershed, and how many businesses relied on that watershed to keep their businesses alive, or generate the power with water.
Turn those wheels.
So I wanted to preserve the water wheel that was in our town, and it's still the very original water wheel, the metal components. And as I got into the research a little bit, I went to the Lock Museum there and met with the curator, and he got me all turned on to help the town, preserve the water wheel, build us a park, get and build a museum.
Right.
I said, oh man, that sounds great. So I went and I joined the Economic Development Commission back in, I believe it was 1999.
Okay.
Somewhere around there, 98, and I was on the commission for 11 years. I became the Economic Development Chairman by 2000, and I managed to improve the whole Main Street environment, designed all the Main Street improvements for the town of Plymouth, and to see all the work being done is just very pleasing for me.
Yep.
And we now have a water wheel park.
There you go.
All the properties around it have been demolished and improved. Now it's a beautiful park with a nice history diorama, which I'm very proud of.
Yes, I should be.
I was also on the NESMA board of directors for about 5 years. I had just had to resign recently because my time is sliced by seconds these days, so it's really tough for me to support more
stuff.
Yeah, so
that's great. But getting
I've done
engaged
that.
in
Yeah,
your
absolutely.
local
It's very
town and all
important.
that. You had mentioned to me at one point about kind of the Main Street and kind of the development there. But I guess why redevelop Main Street? Like, what was kind of the underlying goal there?
Plymouth had a great industrial park. When I first joined the Economic Development Commission, I think we had a brand new industrial park. We only had one business located in the park. We had like 24 lots or something like that.
24 lots, new park, one business.
One business.
That doesn't sound very successful.
It wasn't happy. So, I mean, and the more I was interested about the history piece, I started getting more intimate with the fact that a lot of businesses wouldn't want to move to Plymouth because, the Main Street's the front porch of the business. I mean, you got to have some improved...
Was it not a lot of street appeal there?
Yeah, not a lot of street
Or
appeal.
curb
I mean,
appeal, I
it's the reality of an old New England manufacturing town.
Yep.
And quite honestly, cleaning up Main Street and working on the sidewalk improvement project. And by the time I did all the research, I raised millions of dollars for the town of Plymouth. To the point where we built the plan, and if you had a plan, the DEP would give you award money, or DECD would award funds for improving main streets in in the communities if you had a plan already designed. So I mean, it was
bang, boom.
There you go.
So did you get it done?
Yeah.
How many of those lots in the industrial park are filled now?
I think they're pretty close to being all filled now.
There you go.
So yeah, so
What
it
was
made
the
a big.
impact?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I'm positive that was an impact of the whole thing. I mean, I don't have any data to support that, but it's pretty.
No, listen,
evident.
man, I'm a big believer, and I think anyone who's tried to sell their own house, or recently we helped my grandparents sell their house, and having that curb appeal where someone kind of pulls up and just you only get that one chance to make that great first impression, and if you pull up and the first thing you got to do is explain away the first thing you see, you're just fighting that uphill battle. And I think there's a lot, it's kind of just to tie back that I think it's a lot to do with what this podcast is, to try and get people to understand that manufacturing isn't what you think it is. And you need to go back and see, because there is some great curb appeal. And I think that the state of Connecticut's the same way. We've got this great history and a lot of amazing things happening here if people would kind of relook at it again. Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, before we wrap, I do want to ask you a question.
Sure.
So we talk a little about the white whale customer. I know you're in relationship building now. So my question to you, David, is there one customer out there that you'd like to gain traction with or get deeper involved with, that you'd love to see this podcast or get engaged and give you a call and say, Dave, we want MW to come in here and help us out some more?
Oh, wow. We're involved with so many already. That's an interesting question. Wow. That's a great question. I think, I don't know. I think maybe, I think all of our customers actually would appreciate it, to be quite honest with you. I mean, I don't think there's any one specific.
Right.
So I actually can't answer that.
Can't answer that?
Yeah.
No, fair enough. Well, that's my job, is to try and find questions that stump you. You're a hard one to stump, but I think I might have got you on that one.
Yeah, you did.
Nice. All right. Well, listen, let's wrap it up. I'll take you to the rapid fire round of questions. You ready?
Sure.
Hot takes. All right, here we go. Red Sox or Yankees?
Red Sox.
There we go. Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts?
Starbucks.
Okay. Staycation or exotic destination when you travel?
Oh, staycation next year anyway.
Traveling enough for work as it is. iPhone or Android?
Android.
Ooh. Sports car or SUV?
Sports car.
That's it. If you could do anything other than what you're doing for work today, Dave, what would you do with your life?
I would do the same thing over again.
There you go. Do you have a favorite business book?
The Power of Moments.
Power of Moments. What's one thing you learned early in your career or early in your life that you think helped propel you to the success that you've had?
Work hard.
What's one thing you learned later in your career or later in your life that you wish you could go back to young David and tell him that would help him?
Be more respectful of people's needs.
More respectful of people's needs. That's a really great one. That's a really, really great place to leave it. So, listen, if you want to get more information about you, David, or hear more about MW Industries or anything else, what's the best way they get in touch with you?
It's D. Philbrick at mw-ind.com. Emails are the best for me.
Yeah, there you go.
I can usually answer as long as it doesn't get put into my spam file.
That's D. Philbrick with a PH there
That's right.
on it. We'll put that all in the show notes there. And
Sure,
I know you're on
go.
LinkedIn too, so people
Yeah,
could
absolutely. LinkedIn's a great tool as well.
Yeah,
a lot of people contact me through LinkedIn, which I think is pretty easy as well.
Yeah, get a little background about
Sure.
you too. So that's really, really awesome. So we got this last final question, which is, we've been around the block a lot and talked a lot about a lot of different things today.
Sure.
And from your perspective, looking at the audience right now, when they walk away from here, of all the stuff we talked about, what do you think is, if there was one big takeaway that they would take with them that would help them, what do you think that'd be from what we talked about today?
I think, I don't care what you do for a living, I mean, at the end of the day, if you're a janitor or you're a window washer or you're making donuts, working hard, there's no substitute, because you can be successful no matter what you do if you don't mind applying yourself and working for it. That's it in a nutshell.
Absolutely. And you know something, my takeaway is actually going to build a little bit on that, because I think one of the things that has really inspired me about your story and that I think people could really learn from is do what you're passionate about.
Absolutely.
It's there's no substitute for enjoying what you do. We spend a lot of our lives wrapped up in what we do professionally. Mm-hmm. It's a lot about identity. It's a lot about what we spend our time doing, and a lot of satisfaction comes from it. and there's zero substitute for doing what you love.
Absolutely.
So,
I couldn't agree more.
That's awesome. Miss and David, it's been a really great pleasure having you on
Great.
board.
Thank
you
you
so very much.
Good stuff.
Made in America with Ari Santiago is brought to you by IT Direct.
As always, thanks so much for tuning in. I definitely want your feedback and hope you subscribe. But what I want the most is to build a community where we learn and grow with each other. I hope you're getting a lot of value out of the time we're spending together. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you next time.